Hey everybody, welcome to episode 77 of the Is That Normal podcast, and today we're going to talk about disagreements.
But Randall, I really hope that we don't have a disagreement today, which I don't think is likely, because if you missed our last episode, we talked about personality types, and in particular in the Enneagram, you and I are in the same sphere. We're nines on the Enneagram scale, and that means that we are mediators, peacemakers. Let's say makers. And we also are we don't like conflict necessarily. That's not our strong suit.
Like yes. And I was telling you off camera, I've had some experiences in the last week or two where that has come out, and I've kind of been peacemaker in those situations, and it's uncomfortable, and I just can't stand the idea of somebody not being okay with somebody else,
getting along. So... right. Which it's both a difficulty, because we have to have conflict sometimes, and so and I know I can have a tendency to avoid things if I'm not careful, but it's also a strength that we, like you said, we want to smooth things over. We want to help people talk things out. We want to bring people together and come up with a resolution. But here's the reality: is that some people don't want that. Some people want to fight. Like some people are looking for a fight. So, and we both have people like that in our lives. Right. So tell me a little bit about what conflict, particularly maybe in your family, has looked like with your personality and how that works.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult when you have those opposite, again, going back to the personality traits of there are people that thrive on conflict and drama and, that type of thing. And then, for myself and, that just keeps me in turmoil. And I just I feel like I have to take it upon myself then to try to fix it, to try to get everybody on the same page. And so sometimes that's great. Sometimes, there's also been times in the past, when it comes to family, maybe I've overstepped in trying to do that or maybe created more, more turmoil, in just trying to fix everything that sometimes maybe weren't things that I could fix myself. Yeah. And so, it's difficult when you get lots of those different personality types together. And, we definitely, my brother and I are total opposites when it comes to that. He's the fly off mad and he's ready to go. And, that type of reaction. And I'm always, sometimes maybe too passive, in well, I see both sides of this, and
Yes, man, that's so good. And you did a really good job. I don't have to ask my follow-up questions because you both see the healthy side. There's a healthy side of that, and there's unhealthy things that we tend to do, and we all do whatever our propensity is. So today we're going to talk about conflict, because if you live with other humans, you are going to have conflict of some sort, and we all have good tendencies and bad tendencies. And so today we just want to talk about some good practices for families in handling conflict in their homes.
Well, welcome back to the Is That Normal podcast. And, we say this every week, but if you haven't connected with us, if you're not following us on social media or, getting our emails, be sure to do that. Check that out. We're posting supplemental stuff between episodes and helpful things that we find that we feel like are relevant for parents. And so definitely follow us and check that out so that you don't miss out on some of that stuff. So you kind of asked this question of me, but knowing your family dynamic and how many people are in your household, I'm excited to hear the answer to this. What does conflict look like in your house?
So it's interesting, like I said, not to recap what we talked about last time too much, but I'm just fascinated by personality types, and it helps me have a framework to understand why people are acting the way they're acting, rather than just what's wrong with you. It's oh, well, that's part of your makeup. So that helps me a lot. And so as we've got my wife and I, who are very similar. We're not exactly the same, but we, if you're looking at Myers-Briggs, we're both the diplomats, the ones who want to smooth things over and help people get along. And then we've got 6 kids. And I'd say probably 4 of my kids are in that category as well. So, so us, we're all, we get along and we try to help other people get along. But then I got 2 kids who are like solidly in different camps, like than any of us or each other. And one of them is, if it's yes, he's no. Like it is just, it doesn't matter. It's been that way since he was born. And again, for me as a 9, I like to keep peace and help people get along. But I have a limit to how much conflict I can deal with in one day. And so when he's given me so many notes, that I'm done. Like, you get to this limit there. And so that can be a real challenge. And then I've got another one who's so like logical, systematic, got a plan for everything, but almost no empathy. That they're like, if you're not doing it the right way, like it's over. Like it's like nuclear mode. Like immediately. Like last night we had a situation where she was trying to build something. She was stacking things up, and the one who's the no was in there just knocking it over and over again, and she like came unglued, yelling, screaming. My wife's on the phone. She comes barreling into the kitchen where we're at. She's like, "You've got to stop it!" It's just like this like nuclear explosion going off, and so I had to stop her, which happens so often with conflict in my house. So like, okay, you're the one who's being, offended. But I'm having to deal with you because you're reacting in a wrong way. So I had to calm her down, pull her off the club and say, is anybody bleeding? Is anybody got to go to the hospital? Are you going to make it? Okay, so if all he's doing is pushing over books, we don't go to nuclear. Like you just don't go to nuclear. So we had to talk that through. And anyway, and then of course the one who's the no is like, well, she's wrong and I'm wrong and everyone's always wrong. And so then they storm off. And so, so then I have to go find them and talk to them. So, it's just, so that it's always an adventure.
Yeah.
It's always an adventure.
Yeah. When anytime you put a lot of people in one place for long periods of time, you're going to get conflict. And then when you throw in some variations in personalities and how people respond and react and just view things as a whole, it's a recipe for
and everybody's always clawing for their space and their rights, and that's everybody in my house. There's always this jockeying for position. So what do you do when when you run into some of these situations, which we know happens, and I'm sure whether you have 8 people in your house or 2 people in your house, you're going to have those. And so what are some of the ways that you... And I think some of the things, before we kind of get into the pragmatic stuff is, just got to realize that this is normal. Like you said, I mean, we might have this like utopia in our mind where all our kids are getting along and everybody's always perfect. And if it doesn't go that way, you're like, I failed as a person. Well, that's not true. You're going to have conflict. So prepare yourself for conflict. And don't react, but be proactive. I think that's just really where we have to start. Is rather than me maybe reacting on my unhealthy tendencies and either withdrawing or getting too firm or whatever your tendency is, we got to prepare beforehand. We talk about this a lot. Intentionality is making an informed decision beforehand. So we need to intentionally decide, when, not if, but when we have conflict, which probably will be daily. What am I going to do about it? And so that's a good place to start. But I know for us, Shannon and I, we just know we got to model right behavior. That's where it starts, and that's not a overnight fix. That's a lifetime of just trying to be consistent and trying to be, develop your own character and know that your kids are watching. I think that's really, really important. And so we got to, ask for forgiveness when we need to be forgiven as adults, and we need to offer forgiveness readily when we need to give forgiveness. We just need to model that. Refusing to get unnecessarily aggressive. I think that can be, especially when you're really frustrated or somebody's really off the rails, like you just want to like shake them and stop this and let's be normal. And don't do that. You want to, we'll talk about this in a minute, but you gotta look past the symptoms and not react to those. So you just, so know what your triggers are, know what your unhealthy reaction types are, and be aware of that, so that when you feel that coming up, that you can say, whoa, I need to put the brakes on here. I think that's really good. Watching our language, both just from a don't let coarse words come out of your mouth, Bible sort of viewpoint, but also just not saying things that are attacking, unhelpful. We don't allow name calling in our house. We don't blame people. We don't attack people. We deal with problems.
And if you don't do that, it doesn't take very long for something that is just a difference of viewpoints or opinions to turn into something very personal.
Oh, and ugly, and that can last for decades.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, there's so much hurt that can happen in that. We want to always affirm value in the middle of conflict, and so a lot of the ways we do that is, Shannon taught me this early on in our marriage. Is we don't use always and never statements like he always or she always or I always, and we also use a lot of I statements like I feel this way, or when this happens this is how I feel, rather than saying you did this to me. And I mean, so we try to always help our kids reflect by modeling that for ourselves, of what's going on. And we push for restoration. Like, man, we're in this for the long haul. The option is not to not like everybody in this house. Like, we're in this together. We got to figure out how to fix this. So that's good. And part of that, like I said a minute ago, looking past the situation, the second point is just finding the root cause. Because if there's conflict, there's a symptom on the outside and a reaction on the outside, but it may not even have anything to do with the situation. It may be something that happened a week ago, maybe something they're dealing with other people. I know we've had some situations where our kids are having struggles with, their friends or something.
Yeah.
Well, then they're like pummeling their siblings because they feel bad about this relationship, but they take it out on a different relationship, and we have to help peel back the layers, so we have to be investigative analysts here with our children, and that takes time. You got to, a lot of times what we do is we de-escalate the situation. If we can't come to a quick resolution, separate people and try to have individual conversations, so we can kind of sort through some of that stuff.
And boy, it's easy. I mean, it's easy for us to do that even as adults, to let outside factors that really don't have any bearing on the current situation influence how we respond
all the time. If I'm hungry, man, I might get short with you.
And that's difficult as adults, but for young people, it's even more difficult in our ability to recognize and, like you said, start peeling back those layers. And
funny, but I mean, literally, legitimately, my wife does this. Like when people, either when they're upset or they're feeling bad, like sick, like, have you drank water today? Have you eaten anything today? Like, we start basic things. And like, a lot of times we find out, like, you're just all upset because you're hungry. Like,
amazing.
Get a snack and take a nap, and let's talk about this later, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Another thing in that finding the root is we always are explaining to our kids the goal, again, is restoration. It's developing each other. It's living in harmony. It's not just getting your way. And so as we do that, we try to help other kids see, because sometimes they'll say, like, well, you're going too easy on them. Don't you know what they did? It's like, well, we got to figure out what's causing this. Yeah. And so because I want them to be well as a person, and you want them to be well as a person also. And just trying to help everybody think about that and get on the same page. And then also, man, we set boundaries. Last week I was at our youth group here, and I was standing with 3 siblings who were in our youth group. And the older and the younger were like, just like hammering the middle one, like talking about how bad their hair was, talking about how bad their decisions were. I mean, they were just and then just saying some really unkind things to each other. And I said, you know what? If you were my kids, I would make you say, I'm sorry and apologize right now. We don't do those things in our house. Yeah. We don't attack other people. We don't devalue people. We don't call names. We don't say we hate people. I mean, we don't do this stuff. Like, that's a boundary. And so we don't let our kids say, I mean, that's no. Right. That is not going to happen. No way. No matter what's happened to you. Yeah. We're not doing this. And so, and we have this kind of mantra that we do. My wife says, Elliot, we care. Because a lot of times conflict happens, especially that one that's always the oppositional no. Uh-huh. Like, we'll like try to start resolving it. They're like, well, I just don't care. And we're like, no, Elliot's care. And I don't know if you ever heard the song We Care a Lot by Faith No More. It's like this 90s skater punk song. Yeah. And so then my 9-year-old starts singing that every time. Like, it's like without fail. It's a trained response. We're like, Shannon says, Elliot's care. And she's like, we care a lot. And she starts singing it. And then like it just breaks the whole mood. And it's beautiful. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful thing. So.
That's awesome.
But lastly, what we try to do is we just try to create a culture of grace at our house. Man, I'm excited. I've been working on a new sermon series we're going to start the last Sunday of October at our church called God's Good Grace. We're going to be walking through the book of 2 Peter. And it is saturated with what God's grace is. And what we'll find out is we're surprised. We think about grace, especially as we talk about conflict, we think about it as like letting people off the hook. Well, that's not exactly what grace does.
Yeah.
Grace says this is a big deal, and this has to be resolved in the right way.
Yeah.
And that means we have to be honest about who we are and where we're at. We have to do the hard work. We have to be truthful. I mean, so there's a lot of things that have to happen for true grace. So it forgives, but it stands up for truth, and it demands right things, and it values people over problems, and it doesn't leave anybody behind.
Yeah.
And man, we gotta do that kind of culture. Yeah. We live in a throwaway culture, and we got to stand against that.
And in some of the situations that I referred to earlier, in this past week, one of the things I found myself saying, and was, in a moment where someone's ready to like go to battle, I had to ask the question, this thing has happened. We can't change what has happened, and at this point, the response that you're ready to give, is there any redeeming value, like any resolution, any redeeming value that can come out of that? And the real answer was no. It's only going to cause greater disunity and divide and hurt feelings and frustrations and so taking that moment to step back and go, okay, this doesn't absolve anything, but taking that moment to say, okay, maybe there's a better way to respond to this. Right. And sometimes, we have to take that breath and think about,
yes, we do. We do.
What effect is my response going to have, and how is it going to be healing, or is it going to cause further divide? And
right. Absolutely. So, wow, that's good. That's
so
really good,
so in and of itself, is conflict bad?
Absolutely not. Really, if you get to the base of it, nothing ever changes unless there's some sort of conflict. There has to be tension and conflict for change, and if we don't change, then we don't really get healthy in our lives. So we have to have those tensions, but unresolved conflict is bad.
Yeah.
Unhealthy responses to conflict is bad, but conflict in itself is not bad. It can challenge us. It can reveal new truth to us. It can change our perspective. It can break us out of unhealthy routines. I mean, it can just do so many things. And so if we really want to see our family grow, we need to embrace the conflict, but teach and lead and train them to respond to it in a healthy way. Yeah. I mean, that's just what we have to commit to. And that's, again, not happening overnight.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, you'll get to the end of that and you'll have, de-escalate a situation, have some conversations. You're like, I have no idea how that went.
Yeah.
But man, we'll just get up and do it again tomorrow because there's going to be another conflict. And over time, I think it starts to soak in.
Yeah. And I know we kind of keep going back to and harping on what we talked about in our previous episode of as far as just differences in personalities. And, I think that finding and understanding everybody's personality sure helps when it comes to conflict because, how I respond and how I handle conflict tends to vary depending on who that is and how they respond and deal with conflict. And sometimes, just being able to be aware of that and knowing how to approach difficult conversations and difficult situations based on, who you are as a person can definitely dictate how that that conflict ends up and how it's resolved.
So if you're not getting it, if you missed episode 76, go back and listen to it.
Check it out.
We'll put a link into it, and then it has links to the personality profile, so you can make your family take it. So we'll give you a link to a link, so it'll be great.
Absolutely. So good stuff. Well, so as we wrap up, our two takeaways is the first is to pay attention to conflicts and start creating that culture, and looking at some of those steps that you talked about and the things that are important, and understanding conflict. Like you said, conflict in and of itself is not always bad, but how do we resolve that in a healthy way where we, knowing, especially when you're talking about family members or people that are close to us or children, we all have to go to bed and get up tomorrow morning and live together
again.
And so how do we move past this and to be able to do that? And then the second thing is just share this episode with someone, and
especially if you know somebody who's really disagreeable.
That's right. Absolutely. So we you don't have to tell them that's why you're sharing it.
No, you don't. Just share it with them.
That's right.
That's right.
All right.
Here we go.
Be abnormal.